What happens when discipline collides with disrespect? Imagine this: one man, faced with chaos, turns it into an opportunity for transformation. It was supposed to be just another evening, bathed in the golden hues of a setting sun. The sky above a small park in Savannah, Georgia, shimmered like liquid fire, casting long shadows over joggers, families, and friends sharing laughter. Among them sat a man whose presence didn't demand attention but somehow commanded it anyway. He rested on a weathered bench, sipping from a water bottle, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the lively energy buzzing around him. This wasn't someone in a hurry. He believed life was best savored in its quiet, simple moments. But peace, as fragile as glass, doesn't always last. From the corner of his eye, he noticed a group of young men lingering near the basketball court. Their laughter carried a different tone, sharp, mocking, tinged with malice. Hadn't he heard that kind of laughter before? The kind not born of humor but cruelty, the amusement of those seeking a target. And today, that target was him. "Yo, big man," one of them shouted, loud enough to slice through the chatter of the park. The gang's leader, wiry with a shaved head, pointed at him with exaggerated gestures. "What's up with the heavyweight division over there? Ain't it gym day?" The others burst into laughter, feeding off their leader's energy. His heart didn't skip a beat. He'd been here too many times to count. His thick skin wasn't just a metaphor, it was armor forged by years of ridicule. Yet armor doesn't mean you don't feel the hits. He considered ignoring them, brushing it off as another moment of ignorance. To let it slide. But something shifted in the air, an electric charge warning him that ignoring it wouldn't be enough this time. Little did he know how far things would go or how much of himself he'd have to reveal in the moments ahead. This man was full of contrasts. At first glance, he seemed unassuming, a middle-aged figure in his early 40s, soft-built, exuding an easygoing aura. Yet beneath that exterior lay a quiet strength, hinting at a history richer and more complex than most could guess. Once, he had been a martial artist, competing at regional levels in his 20s. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was his specialty, a discipline requiring not brute force but immense mental clarity and patience. Life, however, hadn't been kind in recent years. After losing his wife in a car accident, grief consumed him. Food became his coping mechanism, and competitive fighting faded into memory. Over time, the sleek, lean competitor gave way to someone heavier, quieter, introspective. Yet, under the surface, his discipline never truly left him. Outsiders saw only the slow walks in the park, the occasional laughter at the local cafe, painting the picture of a man at ease. What they didn't see were the early mornings spent alone in his garage, a mat rolled out, practicing drills learned decades ago. They didn't witness the nights when he shadowboxed in dim light, sweat pouring down his face as he fought, not opponents, but the demons of his past. His relationship with the park was sacred. It was his sanctuary, a place where he could breathe and reconnect with the world without being overwhelmed by it. He watched children run, listened to the rhythm of sneakers hitting pavement, letting himself remember what peace felt like. But not everyone shared his sense of calm. Savannah, charming as it was, wasn't immune to trouble. Lately, the local news buzzed about a group of young men causing disturbances. They weren't hardened criminals, merely reckless boys who found power in numbers and chaos. Vulnerability attracted them, they sought those they believed wouldn't fight back. To them, he probably seemed perfect, a big guy moving slowly, alone. What could he possibly do? But oh, how wrong they were. The mocking laughter grew louder as the gang approached. 4 of them, each emboldened by the other's presence. Their leader strutted forward, oozing exaggerated confidence. His voice cut through the gentle hum of the park. "Hey, big man! You deaf, or you just ignoring us?" he called out, smirking as his friends egged him on. Slowly, the man looked up, his expression calm, unreadable. He took a deliberate sip from his water bottle before placing it beside him. Years ago, he might have snapped back, but he'd learned that reacting impulsively gave people like this exactly what they wanted. "I heard you," he replied evenly, his tone devoid of anger or fear. "What do you want?" The leader's smirk widened. "What do we want?" "Well, for starters, maybe some tips on how to bulk up like you. That's a lot of weight to carry around, man. How do you even get off the couch?" The group erupted into laughter, their voices grating and relentless. Still, he didn't flinch. He'd been in situations like this before. Then one of the others stepped forward, a wiry teenager with a baseball cap turned backward, and shoved him lightly on the shoulder. "You're in our park, man. Maybe you should keep walking before we make you." The shove was nothing compared to the blows he'd endured during his training days. But it wasn't about the force, it was about the intent. Heat rose in his chest, but he forced himself to stay still. Violence wasn't his first choice anymore. "I'm not looking for trouble," he said, his voice low but steady. "Just let me enjoy my evening, and I'll leave you to yours." Bullies, though, don't back down when they think they've found easy prey. Instead, they pushed harder. The leader grabbed the water bottle from the bench and threw it to the ground, its contents spilling over the pavement. "Oops," he sneered. "Looks like your evening just got a little worse." Slowly, the man stood up, his full height towering over the group. For a brief moment, hesitation flickered in their eyes, but it passed quickly. They weren't afraid of size, they counted on the assumption that he wouldn't fight back. But this wasn't about fear or intimidation. For him, it was about control, control of the situation, control of himself. He glanced at the water bottle on the ground, then back at the group. "This is your last chance," he said, his voice firm but calm. "Walk away." The leader laughed, a forced sound betraying his unease. "Or what? You gonna sit on us?" That was it, the moment everything shifted. One of the boys lunged forward, reaching for his arm. The move was sloppy, uncoordinated, a mistake his instincts caught instantly. He sidestepped, grabbed the boy's wrist, and twisted just enough to send him sprawling to the ground. The gang's laughter stopped cold. But this wasn't the end, it was only the beginning of something they would never forget. But not everyone was celebrating. A man in a business suit, who had been observing silently from a bench, rose to his feet and approached the protagonist with a furrowed brow. "You think that was the right way to handle it?" he asked sharply, his tone edged with skepticism. "What if they had weapons? What if someone else had gotten hurt?" The man's questions hung in the air, heavy with accusation. The protagonist met his gaze unflinchingly, his calm demeanor unwavering. "And what would you have done?" he countered simply, his voice steady but probing. The suited man opened his mouth to respond but hesitated, the weight of the question sinking in. He had no answer. A murmur rippled through the crowd, a mix of agreement and lingering doubts. Voices began to rise as people voiced their thoughts, some praising the man for standing up to the bullies, others questioning whether the confrontation could have been avoided altogether. The park, once a quiet haven, had transformed into an impromptu forum for a much larger conversation about courage, conflict, and community. The protagonist raised a hand, silencing the growing chatter. "Look," he said, his voice firm but measured, "I didn't want this to happen. But I wasn't going to let them walk all over me either." He paused, letting his words settle. "We talk about wanting a better community, but that doesn't happen by ignoring the problem. Sometimes, standing your ground is the only way to teach a lesson." The crowd fell silent again, his words resonating deeply. A few nodded in agreement, while others exchanged uneasy glances, grappling with their own feelings about what had unfolded. But this wasn't just about the fight, it was about what came next. And the protagonist knew he had to be the one to start that conversation. As the park slowly returned to its usual rhythm, he found himself surrounded by a small group of people eager to speak with him. Some wanted to thank him for taking a stand, others asked how he had remained so composed in the face of aggression. He answered humbly, his responses simple yet profound. Strength, he explained, wasn't merely physical, it was about discipline, control, and knowing when to act. A boy, no older than 10, tugged on his mother's sleeve before stepping forward shyly. "Mister," he asked, his wide eyes brimming with awe, "are you like a superhero or something?" The protagonist smiled softly. "No, kid. Just a regular guy who doesn't like bullies." The boy grinned, and his mother gave the man a grateful nod. As the crowd thinned, one of the park's regulars, a schoolteacher named Angela, lingered behind. She approached him, her expression thoughtful. "You know," she began, "what you did today was more than self-defense. Those kids, they've been harassing people here for weeks, and no one's known how to stop them. Maybe what they needed was to be reminded they're not invincible." The protagonist sighed, his gaze drifting toward the path where the gang had retreated. "I hope they take this as a wake-up call," he said quietly. "But what they really need is someone to show them a better way. They're just kids, lost and looking for a sense of power. I've been there too." Angela tilted her head, curiosity sparking in her eyes. What do you mean? He hesitated, then admitted, when I was younger, I had my fair share of anger. Life wasn't easy, and I lashed out. Martial arts taught me discipline, gave me focus, and helped me see there was a better way to handle life's challenges. Maybe if someone reached out to those boys before they got to this point, things could have been different. Angela considered his words, a flicker of inspiration crossing her face. Maybe it's not too late, she suggested. What if you're the one to show them that way? The protagonist chuckled, shaking his head. I'm no mentor. I barely know what I'm doing half the time. Angela smiled knowingly. None of us do. But you've got something they don't, a chance to teach them what strength really looks like. Her words stayed with him long after she left. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the park in shades of twilight, he sat back down on the bench, lost in thought. Strength wasn't just about standing your ground, it was about lifting others up, even those who had tried to knock you down. The next day, he made a decision. He visited the local community center and spoke to the director about starting a self-defense and mentorship program for troubled youth. It wouldn't fix everything, but it was a start. And sometimes, that's all it takes to change a life. This story isn't just about standing up to bullies, it's about finding the strength within ourselves to create change, even when it's hard. If this story moved you, take a moment to reflect on how you can make a difference in your own community. Because every action, no matter how small, has the power to ripple outward, shaping the world around us in ways we may never fully realize.